have a conversation about the minimum wage and the importance impacting both New Jersey residents and residents across the country. In particular, I want to mention that it's not only an issue that impacts 21 million people across this country, particularly in Jersey City and places like Newark and Paterson. We have been engaged as it relates to the airport workers in particular, issue that impacts thousands of workers here in New Jersey. That's front and center. We have many leaders here who are engaged in that and engaged in the minimum wage conversation on that front. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Senator Booker, who is going to introduce the Secretary of Labor, Perez.
It's great to be here with Mayor Fulop, and really impressed as a mayor myself. You know very quickly those mayors who are about making positive change happen, who have vision, who have insight, and also a connection to their communities. And that's Mayor Fulop, and I'm really excited about his leadership and the impact he'll have, frankly, here in Jersey City. But he's the kind of mayor that can have an impact really for the whole state and region, as he has a real vision for his city. I'm pretty thrilled that we would have one of Barack Obama's principal cabinet members come to Jersey City, come here to New Jersey to talk about this issue. Please understand that this is somebody who has national obligations, in fact international obligations, because of all the things that are going on with the Department of Labor and how they affect our nation. But the fact that he would come here on this issue, it says a lot. And it's really because this issue is one of those fundamentally important issues for our country to be the kind of nation we say we are. Like Langston Hughes said in that great poem, "Oh, let America be America again." This is the truth of our country. Can we be a place where somebody works hard, plays by the rules, and ensures that they can then provide for their family? We know that's not the case right now. We know we have families that work full-time, but still find themselves below the poverty line. And so I'm thrilled at the leadership of President Barack Obama. You saw him up there. In a State of the Union address last year and this year, he challenged this nation to raise the minimum wage. And this year he said, I'm not waiting for Congress. I got to go down there right now to Washington, right after this meeting, get on a train and go down there and battle it out. I'm fighting out for expanding the unemployment insurance, for raising the minimum wage. But what inspires me about the Secretary and the President is they realize they have the ability to do some positive things right now, and that is raise it for federal workers.
It is an honor to be here with all of you today to discuss the President's agenda, to discuss not only the minimum wage, but to discuss other matters of great importance to the middle class. You know, today, and I've only met the mayor by reputation until now, and I've heard so much about your work. And again, I love working in local government. The President's agenda is about growing a prosperous middle class, about providing opportunities for people to punch that ticket to the middle class. You heard the State of the Union last week, in which the President outlined an opportunity agenda in pretty clear and concrete terms. And it was an agenda in which we need to equip every child with the education that he or she needs so that they can get a good job. We want to make sure that we reward work with fair wages. We want to make sure that we give people a chance to learn new skills so that they can compete for today's jobs and be ready for tomorrow's jobs as our economy evolves. We want to make sure that we equip people with a secure retirement, and we ensure that they have health care, access to affordable health care, so that they're not one accident away from bankruptcy and catastrophe in their own lives. Those are the building blocks of opportunity. And those building blocks, as I said, include making sure that people get a fair wage for a hard day's work. Nobody who works a full-time job should have to live in poverty. No persona que está trabajando 40 horas por semana debe vivir en pobreza. Nadie. No person who works a full-time job should have to live in poverty. But regrettably, there are millions of Americans doing just that, working harder and falling further behind. And that's why the President has set forth in his year of action a series of very concrete steps to help people punch that ticket to the middle class, ensure they remain in the middle class by making sure they have the skills to succeed, by making sure that people have access to opportunity in a variety of ways, And one way in which that is the case is through making sure that work pays off and work is rewarded with a decent wage. 75 years ago, FDR signed the Fair Labor Standards Act. That guaranteed a minimum wage for the first time in the United States. And FDR called that legislation the second most important piece of legislation after the Social Security Act to secure basic rights for working people. And he was right. And 75 years later, that minimum wage is critically important. However, as you know, as a result of inflation, the minimum wage has lost its earning power. And as a result, we're really at levels that we haven't seen since the early 50s because of the loss of purchasing power of the minimum wage. And so that's why the president declared last week that Americans deserve a raise, that we need to raise the minimum wage, and that the work that's been done in the Senate and the House by Senator Tom Harkin and by Congressman George Miller is so critical to the agenda of action in 2014. And raising that minimum wage will help so many people. It's cold days like today, where it's snowy out, that we're reminded of the consequences of actions beyond one's control, bad weather. If you're a restaurant worker right now and you're making $2.13 an hour, chances are you're not going to have that many people showing up for lunch because they can't get out of their office or their home. So what happens for that person? You make less money. That's sunk costs. You're not going to recover that. Your rent is flat. You got to still pay your rent. You still have to pay your utilities, but your income is down because the tipped wages have not gone up in decades. If you are a worker who can't get to work today because of the inclement weather, chances are you're not going to get paid. Your rent still has to be paid, but you won't get paid today. So snowy days like today remind us of the precarious state that low-income workers have to live in and day out. And I am so honored that we have been joined by workers here to tell their stories, because we can talk about the millions of Americans who are suffering, who are working hard and falling behind. But behind these statistics is real people. And we can help people by raising the minimum wage. And the president, as Senator Booker correctly pointed out, declared that he's not going to wait for action. He hopes that Congress will act. And I would note that Congress has a long, proud, bipartisan history of raising the minimum wage, including under the administration of George Bush, including by one of my predecessors, Elizabeth Dole, who was a labor secretary under a Republican administration and who called her efforts to raise the minimum wage one of her proudest moments. And so there is that long, proud, bipartisan history in raising the minimum wage, but the president felt strongly that the federal government needs to set an example, just as local governments set the example in how they do their contracting and how they do their other business. So last week, the president announced his intent to issue an executive order ensuring that federal contractors receive 1010. So the person cleaning the floor in a federal facility who's making a minimum wage, he or she will get that raise that they so deserve. And that raise will mean nearly another $6,000 a year for a full-time employee who's earning a minimum wage. That is real money, and that will enable them to climb out of poverty. We're going to continue to work hard because we recognize that increasing the minimum wage is helping people who have children, who have family responsibilities. The vast majority of people, 85% of people who would benefit from a minimum wage are over 20. Nearly 60% are working women. A quarter are heading households and supporting children. 25% son Latino. 15 son African American. This cuts across every demographic, this cuts across every community, and when we put money in people's pockets, you know what they do? They spend it. And when they spend it, our economy grows. 100 years ago, Henry Ford raised the minimum wage. He doubled the wage for workers on his assembly line. And he did it for a number of reasons. Number one, he had 360% attrition on his assembly line. He couldn't retain people. He needed to raise his wages so that he could build a more loyal workforce, a more efficient workforce. He also said that people working on my assembly line ought to be able to afford to buy my product. And he noted that when you pay a fair and decent wage and you put money in people's products, pockets, they buy more things. When they buy more things, businesses have to make more things. People go to more restaurants. They spend more. Businesses get to hire more. Everybody benefits. Our economy is growing at a steady clip. 46 consecutive months of private sector job growth to the tune of 8 million new jobs. But we have to pick up the pace, as the senator and the mayor would attest, and the president has stated repeatedly. And one way to grow the economy at a faster clip is to put more money in people's pockets so they consume more and businesses have to hire more. That is the essence of the minimum wage. It is a common sense solution to ensuring wage fairness and to grow our economy, and that is why we are going across the country. We've set the example at the federal level by issuing this minimum wage, and we encourage other states, and we applaud the state of New Jersey for the actions of the voters. The voters of New Jersey reflect the voters of the nation. There's overwhelming support for increases in the minimum wage among Republicans, Democrats, independents alike. People want to see more money in people's pockets. Overseas, the Conservative Party in the UK just announced its support for an increase in the minimum wage. The United States minimum wage is among the lowest in developed countries in the world. That's not who we are as a nation. We are a nation of fairness. We are a nation that rewards hard work, and we are a nation that needs to give America a raise. That's why we're here today, and we look forward to hearing from all of our remarkably courageous people who are here to tell their stories and give truth and meaning to the statistics, because behind every statistic is a person who's suffering needlessly, and we're hopeful that working together we can muster the bipartisan consensus that has been there before and hopefully will be there again. So 2014, I predict, will be a year of action for immigration reform, for the minimum wage, and for so many other issues that involve access to opportunity. Thank you so much, Mayor, for hosting this. Thank you, Senator, for hosting this, and I appreciate all the time you've been here.
My name is Demetrius DiBiase. I'm from Newark, New Jersey. I'm a Newark International Airport worker. I'm a baggage handler. I started working at the Newark Airport back in '08, and from the years of '08 to 2010, I have developed a spinal injury, which that I have to deal with from here on out until things get better for me. But you know, the $8.25 an hour is a step, and it helps out a little bit, but each day is a struggle because the issues that I have to challenge with as far as my my injury and stuff like that. I have days where I have good days and I have a lot of days where days are bad, but each day is a struggle because as you lose those hours or those days or possibly a week, it puts you behind in your bills. So I have to take on medical bills as well as taking care of my 3 kids that that also needs my support and help. And it's kind of each day again it's just a struggle with the 825, and hopefully as we go on here today that somehow Governor Christie will also step up and help us get this 1010 an hour as well as other airports. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're concluding right now our roundtable discussion with Senator Booker and Secretary of Labor Perez. It really speaks to the need to really have action at the local level. When you see inaction at the federal level in Washington, there's really the opportunity to make progress here. And this was important because while we talk about percentages and numbers in abstract, we had people who are really impacted in working 40 hours at the minimum wage. These aren't teenagers, these are parents, grandparents struggling to get by, and a small change is meaningful in their lives. So when you look at minimum wage today in this country and you look at the rate of inflation over the past several decades, you realize that many families are falling behind, and that's not what this country is about. So this was important, and we're going to continue the fight to improve minimum wage and working standards for working families. President Obama has cabinet members out making sure that on the local level people understand the urgency of this situation, and so it really is a privilege to have the Secretary here in Jersey City, and we're going to continue to advocate for this important change.